Good evening. It is 5:30 on June 20th, and I'm calling the Learning and Teaching Committee meeting to order. My name is Becky McCabe. I'm a co-chair for L&T, and
Matt Kuchar here.
so this evening we have a full agenda. But before we start, I just would like to take a brief moment to recognize that Juneteenth, which is a federal holiday being observed today across the country. Juneteenth it commemorates the anniversary of the emancipation of enslaved African Americans, the last of which were having become emancipated on June 19th, 1865, when Texas became the final state in the Confederacy to proclaim its end to institutional slavery. Juneteenth became a federal holiday in 2021. So we take a moment to just recognize that. We have no citizen comments and no superintendent updates, so we're going to just jump right into our Empower update. So,
all right,
Dr.
good
Nigel.
evening. I'd like to invite Sarah Kane up to the table to talk a little bit about Empower. You may remember that in December, Sarah came to kind of talk a little bit about how has our implementation gone so far, because it's a new program for us this year. And in part of that, we had a request for us to kind of really think through what are those success criteria? How do we know if this program is successful? So Sarah's going to share a little bit of insight in regards to how do we know this program is successful based upon some of the work that our teachers did over this past couple of weeks. It's all yours, Sarah.
Welcome, everyone. Well, I'm excited to update you on the first year of completion of our brand new special. My name is Sarah Kane, and I am the Assistant Director of Instruction, and I oversee the program here in D303. I also want to acknowledge our Empower teachers that are out in the audience today who took time out of their summer to show passion for our program. If you ladies could please stand up. Oh, and we do have now a gentleman on our team, so. And they would be happy to answer questions too, if you have them for them. So we will get started. This update aligns with the innovative strategic commitment, as well as the goal to provide learning opportunities for students that are responsive to the whole student, which will prepare them for life after District 303. This also aligns to the policy 6:40 curriculum development and policy 6:65 student social and emotional development. Tonight, I will share how our program has been influential across other content areas, and I will also share the success indicators that were determined this summer for implementation this fall. Before we begin, I'd like to illustrate the impact this program is having on our students outside of the Empower classroom walls.
At the beginning of the 21-22 school year, we added the additional Empower special. So our students attend art twice a week, music twice a week, Empower twice a week, and PE 4 times a week.
Empower is a place where all students can belong. Students who may be multimodal communicators, students who may have learning differences, students who may struggle in other parts of their school day can really shine alongside their peers in the Empower setting. And ultimately, our role as educators is to create emotionally and physically safe and inclusive learning environments for our students.
When I visit an Empower classroom, I notice the excitement. There's a buzz in the room. Students are on the floor, they're working at a table, they're spread out, they're collaborating with each other. They are making decisions together, coming to a consensus. Students are setting goals, revising those goals, reflecting on what worked and what didn't work. It is very student driven.
I like best about Empower is when we get to work with our table groups and we get to try new things that we've never tried before in Empower. And it teaches us how to work together and how to communicate with other people.
because there's hands-on opportunities in Empower and we use very similar vocabulary in the classroom and here in Empower, that the students are able to make those connections. I know that I've talked to a first grade teacher who, when we were doing Make It to the End, we were working on chain reactions. And they said, well, chain reactions are like cause and effect. What something happened to cause something else to happen.
Having a class that just devotes itself to, hey, we're going to explore how to work together, but also just how to be creative. It's just a huge blessing as a parent. I mean, I had my kids doing chain reactions at home by themselves and teaching us about chain reactions. So, I mean, I think that's some good evidence that that's a lot of creative thinking and a lot of excitement around stuff that they're just really pumped to learn.
My favorite part in Empower is the coding of the robots. For Cephalbot, like you have these iPads and you can code them in different ways. And if you tap on Drive in the menu, it will change the color of it and like move it around. And for Automobot, they're really small and they have these sensors. And when you put black, it moves. And then if you put these different colors on it, they can like speed, slow down, turn around.
One powerful piece of Empower is the introduction to so many different topics. We're introducing them to robotics, to coding, to stop motion, telling stories in different ways, to using their imagination, to taking risks.
For sure, with my two boys, I see it has become a part of who they are. My firstborn is very much a rule follower and very much not a risk taker. And what I've noticed with him is this has really helped him to start to take if you don't get it right the first time. And that's not a negative thing.
My sister has like an influence on me that makes me like a perfectionist, and I hate when I make mistakes, but Empower's taught me like mistakes are okay and it's like a part of human nature. And I made many mistakes in Empower, but yet again, Mrs. Taylor's always there to help.
My hope for Empower moving forward would be that as a teacher, I could collaborate more with that Empower teacher, with our PLTW units, and they're working on robotics and we're working on robotics. It'd be great if we could do those skills and work on those things together. So it's a, what we're doing in the classroom directly translate to what Empower is able to do with the kids too.
I have been gathering reflections from the students, and a lot of them are that they're able to be creative, that they are trying something new that they didn't think they were able to do. And they're learning about themselves as learners and about what they're capable of. My hopes for Empower going forward is that the kids got a taste of what it means to be creative, to be a learner.
It's aptly named because I do feel like what is happening is they are empowered.
Well, as you could hear, this program in just its first year of implementation is having a powerful effect across the students' day. So we are excited to build on that potential moving forward. One of our strategic commitments is innovative learning, and this directly aligns to the philosophy and day-to-day instruction within the Empower classroom. We believe that all learning should be personalized, authentic, responsive, and competency-based. This program provides experiences where students can apply that knowledge and skills in real-world problem solving within our performance-based tasks. Through this, they are able to wonder, create, design, collaborate, connect, and imagine. As a reminder, these are our guiding principles. These are what are embedded day to day within the classroom. They remind us of our student learning, expectations for student learning, and what is in bold is the focus for that particular guiding principle. The work in the Empower classroom easily translates across a child's day. Now, I've illustrated here a quick snapshot, but know that there are so many other experiences that I could share with you. However, I would probably go over my time allotment, and I want to make sure that I respect everybody's time. But our classroom teachers would love to have you come in and experience that in person. That truly will give you the perspective that they see day to day. Thank you, Mrs. McCabe and Mrs. Bell, for coming in and experiencing that. Hopefully you were able to see some of the excitement and application that they see every day. The first row of pictures that you see here illustrates the connection with the ELA strand of collaborative discussions. That's just one way that the students are able to practice that skill in the Empower setting. You can see them on the picture to the left, creating a building challenge where they're able to collaborate on a way to keep their creation sturdy and secure by identifying different types of materials. Within that, they are able to discuss with their teammates, and then that then aligns with the social science standard below, which is them establishing rules and responsibilities. And with that, they are able to delineate tasks within each other's groups. I remember one of the competencies in our Empower program is communication. That's what the teachers are assessing. We're not assessing content and we're not assessing the tools. So that's specifically what the teachers are listening for and observing within their students, their ability to communicate. And then that is able to directly translate into the classroom setting. Really a success indicator of that would be that reflection piece. What was successful within that group? Were you successful in that role? What changes do we need to make? And how can we do that moving forward? The next row illustrates the alignment with math. In the mathematical practice standard, we want students to understand problems and persevere in solving them. That's also the focus of the coordinating ELA standard. This is another area where I could share several examples, but because this is a daily occurrence. The picture in the second row on the bottom left, you could see students engaging in Ozobots, where they are trying to figure out the algorithm to get the robot to do what it needs to do. The picture on the right is a group of students working on stop motion animation. Stop motion animation is where students are really making short movie clips out of several hundred static pictures. And what's really important about that is that they're able to communicate that story within the consistency of the lighting, the consistency of the setting, the consistency of the placement of objects, and really problem solving on how to get to their end goal efficiently. Quran actually had the ability to have a woman come in who does stop motion for a living, and she was able to come in and provide her expertise with stop motion and really give the students an upgraded experience with that. That was really fun for them. For the last row, the focus is on analysis. That skill has been practiced within the Empower setting, which you can see aligns to the science and social science classroom setting. The picture at the bottom left is of students working with a Dash robot, which is like a mini human. I'm not sure if you've experienced the Dash robots before, but it could dance, it could play music, it could throw balls, talk to you, but the coding algorithm needs to be correct. And so therefore, students need to analyze the information that's in there and ensure that it functions the way it needs to function. The picture to the right is students engaging in a building challenge. And that building challenge, again, they select their materials. And so that does take trial and error. And we do celebrate failure because we reflect on that. What didn't work? What could we do differently next time? And that's where that growth really occurs. I'd like to give you a quick snapshot of 2 of our 9 modules that students experienced this year. This is a snapshot of our Show It Off module. And our Show It Off module is focused on storytelling. And the design question that the students all responded to was, how will I utilize multimedia to effectively communicate my story? Obviously, ELA played a part in that too, because we did during that planning process focus on the elements of a story. But in Empower, our focus is not the content or the tool, it's that competency. So in this particular module, we focus on communication, initiative and self-drive, and planning and organization. And we do that through the launch cycle, which is our engineering design process. What you see here are snippets from our own D303 students. So you can see that they've selected stop motion, they've selected puppet shows, they've selected scratch coding, and others to present their learning and present their stories. The next one I'd like to share is the snapshot of our Make It to the End module, which has a focus on simple machines and chain reactions. In this particular module, teachers assess problem solving, critical thinking, adaptability, and flexibility. The one task and design question students focused on was, what effect does a simple machine have on my life? And then how can I revise my design and improve it? Students experienced and designed within that launch cycle, like we always have, and then they get the ability to select their materials, and they experienced marble runs, ramps, dominoes, blocks, magnet tiles, paper towel rolls, and just about anything else that they could find. This school year, we were able to gather initial data with our walkthroughs. The walkthrough form is pictured to the right. Building and district administrators were able to assist in gathering that data. And then the data was synthesized and analyzed with the Empower teachers this summer. Yes, we have already had our summer work. Our Empower teachers got right to work right after school was over. Our group was able to utilize this data as well as data from student and teacher reflections to align our focus. Student choice and student agency were really what came about from our data discussion. So this coming school year, we will focus on ensuring that 80% of our Empower classrooms are consistently implementing student choice with fidelity. Another focus will be on the student agency piece, where students are leading the learning and teachers are the facilitators. One way we've honed in on that is the learning intentions paired with the co-creation of success criteria, and then the valuable reflection component. That being said, we have identified our second indicator being that 80% of classrooms are consistently identifying and utilizing learning intentions within their daily classroom instruction. To do this, our team is utilizing our learning management system, Schoology, and its ability to track mastery. So when we align students' documentation of learning, then we're able to track that at a high level, and we can synthesize the data and move forward from there. Shown here is one of the competencies within our Get Out and Play module. This will help you to see how the competencies align and progress across the grade levels. One competency within the Get Out and Play module is communication. The Empower teachers aligned learning intentions at each grade level, and you can see that the kindergarten learning intention is where they're learning to listen, and then that progresses to 5th grade where they're learning to collaborate effectively with others during conversations. This is an example of how the competencies progress through the modules. Students participate in recess games and playground activities to facilitate the learning of this particular competency. And to ensure that students meet this competency and these learning intentions, the teachers will work with the students to co-create their success criteria. They will ask questions like, well, what does it exactly mean to build on each other's ideas and conversations? What does it mean to be, how do you know when you are successful? And then when they are able to articulate that, The success criteria, students can self-assess, and then teachers are able to assess the student learning. And that is it. Do you have any questions for me or for the teachers?
I don't have a question. I just want to say how amazing it was. I was really excited to see it anyway, but it far exceeded my expectations. I had some great conversations with some of the teachers that I spoke to, that I visited their classes, and it was just really cool seeing the kids engage, and it looks to the bystander as play when you walk in. I knew what it was, but if someone was just walking by the classroom, they might think, oh, they're playing. Not at all. When you get in and you look, and of course, when I came in, oh, there's a special guest, all the kids are like, I want to show you this. And they're, kindergartners with iPads, and they're navigating through their IDs and signing in and out of their account. It's teaching them so many multifaceted things. I cannot say enough cool things about this. I really adored meeting the teachers, and then they were so nice to show me around and talk with some of the students. But one of the coolest things I thought of was the potential. And I can't remember if it was my visit to Davis or to Norton Creek, where I had more time talking with the two teachers there at those two different schools we were talking about. I'm wondering, in about 10 years or maybe even 5 years, what will this do to the enrollment in Infinity? What will this do to the enrollment in the Synergy program? And that'll be really interesting to see. So I'm really excited that kids in kindergarten are learning about coding. It's spectacular. So well done to all of the teachers. If you're here, if you're watching, thank you so much. I could not be more thrilled about this.
Any questions?
I do have, I have a comment and a question. I didn't get to go and see other classrooms, engaging and empower. I do get to hear about it at home though. And there is a lot of excitement around it. It's probably the one thing that comes home the most frequently without asking questions. That comes like straight out of my son. So I do think it is extremely engaging. I think kids are learning quite a bit of skill. I think, Mrs. Bell kind of hit the nail on the head. It's what are the future? This is the right now look fors and listens. Okay, so what are we looking for the future? What's the connection between 80% of the classrooms are consistently implementing student choice with fidelity, and then 80% of the classrooms are consistently identifying and utilizing learning intentions within their daily classroom instruction. What are we intending on happening down the road? What do we intend to see? What are we hopeful to see, and how will we measure that?
You got it.
I'm just having a conversation right before this with Tina, which she doesn't mind. But we actually are, because we do work so closely together on how we can align this to the middle school and high school pathways, because we do see such correlation, and then thinking about how they are measuring success and then how that can progress up to that level, because we have that ability to, these students are learning these skills at such an early age, that then the progress moving up to middle school and high school could really increase what we're able to do at that level. So there's a lot of potential, but that's where we could start.
Yeah, so if I could maybe add on to that a little bit. So when you talked about that walkthrough document that we have, that walkthrough document really goes back and connects to the guiding principles that when that group of parents and staff members came together to build this course, they kind of said, these are our guiding principles. These are the things that we want to see happening. So that walkthrough document then identifies, are we seeing it? Are we not? Are we living into and providing access to those principles? And one of the things that Sarah and I talked about as we were really thinking about, well, what does that mean? And how do we know what success looks like? Was to say, we got to take it slow and one step at a time and kind of focus in. So I would say, and I'm kind of throwing out there, but that we want those principles at 80% of our classrooms being happening all the time. And that we want to take it and really be able to focus in on each of those principles over time, so that we can build them up into that piece of it. So I think when we think about where are we headed with that, it's wanting to make sure we're living true to the principles that were established when we began the process, and that we're also monitoring you hit on this a little bit in your presentation, the competencies that we've identified. Are kids actually hitting those competencies? And we'll be able to pull that data at a much larger level once we get it into Schoology to be like, first graders, we've got 40%, 50%, 100%, whatever that might be, meeting that competency. That looks great. Or, oh, we need to go in and we need to tweak and think and adjust and kind of move along the way.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Kuchar, do you have any questions? I have a couple, just a couple. How do parents know how the kids are doing? And forgive me if I should already know this, but how do you report back to parents?
There are multiple ways that that's being done and how we're also going to do that moving forward. But currently, the teachers are utilizing our learning management system, Schoology. And so we have done some recruiting to get the parents onto the learning management system, because then they can see what their students are putting on there. The students are documenting their learning with pictures and videos and screenshots, as well as there are buildings that have Empower communication that goes out in their weekly principal newsletters. And so that information is also communicated there. There was also a parent university on that. And so that there was communication, and that recording is obviously on there. And then of course our parent website, we push out as much as possible. And then just about every e-news, I think that Carol Smith puts out, we're always getting some Empower nugget in there as well. So we're really trying to get the word out and communicated on what exactly is happening and what exactly is Empower.
And do the teachers, are they doing a report card about individual kids as well? So
Yes.
they are just keeping in mind, they're doing every student in the building.
Yes. Yes, just like any other special.
Right, okay. I also wondered about our bilingual students and how are they engaged in Empower?
Well, our first guiding principle is that these innovative learning experiences are for all students. So no matter who they are, they get that ability to participate in there. And so I don't know if anybody wants to.
Do you want to come up to the mic?
Otherwise, the parents at home or anyone who's watching can't hear you. We can hear
Sure,
you.
hello.
That's why.
So as an ELL background person, I've found that Empower is one of the areas that our ELL students can thrive the most, because so much of it is hands-on. So much of it doesn't require much explanation. I mean, I had a student this year that came in halfway through the year with 0 English, and she thrived. She was leading other kids by the hand and taking them to the purposeful play areas, or getting on the Dash robot and coding it, because the technology is so intuitive at this age for these kids. So they really get to step into the driver's seat. When they're in their own classroom, they're sitting there and it's like Charlie Brown sometimes, you hear the teacher talking and it's going over their head, because again, some of our students have 0 English. So when they step into Empower and this technology is intuitive and there is the launch cycle that's repeated again and again, they really get that. And I think it's a place where they can be more successful than just about anywhere else in the school.
Great, thank you.
I just want to make one quick comment that I happened to see one of the dual bilingual classes in Empower at Davis. And there were students speaking in multiple languages at multiple times during this one table of students. And I think, gosh, I saw so many, I'm not sure, but they were younger, but maybe 1st or 2nd grade. Maybe you remember. Yep. Okay, good. Thank you. I'm glad. Like, I think, and it was sort of mind blowing. And I was like, tell me a little bit more about this. It's just like, oh yeah, they're just, this person was explaining this word and then they're just communicating. And it was a hands-on experience. So they were able to learn it much quicker. So it was just completely different. It was so cool.
I also I went to Fearson Creek and to Bell Graham and enjoyed it as much as anyone, and appreciate being able to come into the classroom. Will this video be posted somewhere so others can see it? And I assume we have an Empower portion on the website that.
We do, and we can make sure that that's posted as
Okay,
well.
that'd be great. Mr. McNally?
Just one quick question. So you had mentioned, Mrs. McCabe had mentioned that you're able to track the individual success of individual students. Is that something we can do year after year to kind of track the success of this program? And then we can see in those, when we get to the Infinity program and those kinds of things, how are these kids doing, and is there a higher percentage of them going into Infinity and so forth?
They're really getting into the nitty gritty of our learning management system, and our Empower teachers are really delving right in. They're getting in there right away, but that is what we're utilizing. We have the ability to document and attach our competencies on there, and then from year to year, we can track that and look at that data at a high level. So
The only comment I would make, and I'm sure you're thinking, the team is thinking of this, is learning from parents that had students in the beginning of the Infinity, as well as being a Synergy parent in the beginning. There's always that flux where you're learning and you're changing and you're adapting the program. And all I would just say is that with kids that were Infinity when they were leaving 8th grade, they were getting into, and well, Mrs. Lewis wasn't here at that time, but Mr. Richter knows that there were kids getting into 9th grade well above the honors and AP level. And so there was some scrambling doing. So what would be, obviously you're not changing things right now for 5th graders going to 6th graders, but looking at that just so that we don't just drop them off in 6th grade Infinity and they're, well above. Because there might be individual students and that's totally different. But if seemingly a bunch of students are higher level, maybe just looking at that and adjusting. And I believe that Infinity teachers are newer or going to be new. So that may be something that's relatively simple to start implementing, having them connect with Empower.
yeah, and as we get into, the program, that ability to collaborate with teachers and to communicate the level that the students are succeeding at is hopefully a collaborative conversation that they're able to engage in the further they go on in the program. So
I don't want to make sure to be clarifying, it's not like we dumped our students off. I was just saying that they were far exceeding the 9th grade level. And I believe that's where AP for freshmen became available because there was this need for advanced classes at the freshman level. So I just want to clarify that that's not what I'm meaning, just saying they were exceeding their expectations.
And I'll just add one more thing here. Like Mrs. Barker, my kids speak about this quite a bit as well. They're very enthusiastic about it. They love the collaborative aspect of things and kind of the applied learning. So I'm interested as we see more and more of this data and see these outcomes, because I believe that there's a good chance that these kids are going to thrive in other areas, and we're going to be able to correlate that data with academic success, because of course we want to see that as well. So just more of a comment. Thanks for the thorough presentation of this. And like I said, my kids are enthusiastically engaged with that as well.
thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all of you coming tonight. We appreciate your time and look forward to next year and getting more information. So thank you very much. We can move on now to, thank you, our curriculum and resource implementation update from, I believe, the middle school.
Absolutely. I'd like to invite Tina King up, who has been leading our curriculum development process for our middle school ELA. She's going to just be providing you an update on the work that we have done so far this year and kind of foreshadowing where we are going. So one of the things that we had talked about when I kind of transitioned into this position was providing learning and teaching with an update on the curriculum process and where we are and where we're going, so that we don't come to the end of the process and bring forward a huge process of here's what we want, here's where we're at. And we haven't necessarily explained to you where we're at or where we're going, or if we needed to readjust or make any changes. So that's really what the purpose of tonight is just to provide a general overview of kind of that information about the work that they've done. And they've done some pretty cool things that I know Tina's excited to share with you.
There we go. Good evening. I'm here to give you an update on the curriculum work in progress for middle school English language arts. And let's see. Okay, this curriculum work is aligned with policy 6.4, curriculum development, and also aligned to the school board goal to ensure that every student has college, career, and life competencies necessary to make the post-secondary choice. In the 2021 school year, we began work with a team of specialists and teachers on the curriculum phase of planning in our curriculum assessment and instruction design process. We've been working in this phase on 4 components: creating a vision and a set of beliefs aligned to instructional excellence in the middle school language arts classroom, identifying the key components of evidence-based practices based on a review of research. We've also been analyzing the current academic achievement of students in middle school, and we have been developing a common understanding of the ELA Common Core standards. I'd like to celebrate an amazing team of educators working together on this work. We have teachers, we have instructional support coaches, reading specialists, LRC directors, and our English language coordinator. And tonight I'd like to celebrate. We have a few teachers here. They'd like to stand up and be recognized. And I'd like to thank them for coming and taking time out of this summer to support this work. Thank you. And we have representation from both schools at every grade level, in addition to all the specialists represented on this team. So I'd like to give you just an update of the work that we've done in this first year. Excuse me. We started this year in the fall. I went and met with every single ELA teacher in middle school at both middle schools during the PLC time. And we wanted to look at, like, where are we at right now? So we reviewed the longitudinal student achievement data for ELA. I listened to students and teachers talk about the needs for curriculum and began to recruit the team for the curriculum design process. We kicked off the year with a very inspirational professional learning and review of research. We got to meet monthly with 2 researchers, Kelly Gallagher and Penny Kittle, and we did a book study on the 4 essential studies of adolescent literacy. We learned about essays, book clubs, poetry, and digital composition. We had over 40 teachers participate after school in this learning, and it was really invigorating and hopeful, and it kind of set the theme of joy for learning for our curriculum process. Then in the winter and spring, the team began to meet and talk about our vision and beliefs. We reviewed the middle school literacy guidance document, and we began working on a common understanding of the state standards for ELA, including the reading and writing standards, and we began to identify the priority standards. As part of this work, identifying our current reality. So where are we at now, and our vision? Where do we want to be in the future? And what are the gaps that we have right now? As part of this work, we looked at our longitudinal student achievement data. And this is a snapshot of some of the data that the team has reviewed. Beginning in 2016, we looked at our PARC IAR data. And you can see in this table the percent of students meeting and exceeding standards. And you can see from 2016 to 2019, we had a substantial increase of 20%. Students meeting and exceeding standards. We went from 51% in 2016 to 71% in 2019. And we attribute this work to our work on writing instruction and also professional learning about the rigor and expectations for reading. You can also see in the data that we went, in comparison to our benchmark districts, from 8th place in student achievement to 2nd place in 2019, second only to Naperville 203. You can also see in the table the effects of the pandemic in 2021, when students meeting and exceeding standards decreased to about 50%. Although we had decreases that year, all of our benchmark districts have similar decreases, and our rank order placement stayed the same in 2nd place. So again, we're looking at data to see where we are now and where we'd like to be in the future. As part of our work, we really spent time looking at our vision and our beliefs about effective literacy instruction, including evidence-based practices. And this document is included in your supplemental materials for further review, but I wanted to highlight our belief that literacy instruction is explicit, systematic, interactive, and differentiated for all students to honor their strengths and interests in the classroom. We will use evidence-based practices for teaching and learning and develop deep content knowledge to empower and enable our students to become stronger readers, writers, and communicators. During our spring and summer work, we spent time working on the progression of reading and writing standards from 5th grade through 9th grade, and then identifying the priority standards. Priority standards are a carefully selected subgroup of the standards that students must know and be able to do by the end of the school year. These are really assured student competencies that each teacher needs to help every student learn. All of the other standards are supporting standards and don't receive the same degree of emphasis in instruction. One of the greatest benefits of identifying priority standards is the focus and clarity for teachers. If you think of the standards as a fence, we can think of the priority standards as the fence posts. They're deeper and stronger, and they're more important. The rails on the fence are all the other standards, and they serve to connect, enhance, and support the learning in the priority standards. So the team worked together. I have too many things to click here. The team worked together on the reading and writing priority standards and came to consensus about which standards have these three criteria: endurance, leverage, and readiness. If a standard has endurance, it means the importance of the standard exists beyond the grade level and beyond the course. For example, proficiency in reading informational text is something that all of us do in our careers every day. So these standards would have endurance. If a standard has leverage, it goes beyond the content in the ELA course. For example, writing an analytical essay is important in social studies and science. So that's a standard that would have endurance. And then the last one was readiness. Would this be essential learning that would prepare students for the next grade level? So if a standard had endurance, leverage, and readiness, it was identified by the team as a priority standard. So here's an example of a priority standard from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. This is about argumentative writing, and all three grade levels identified it as a priority standard, but you can see the progression of the standard from 6th grade and 7th grade and 8th grade. Students change what they're doing with the claims and the level of sophistication in writing about the claims. So this is a sample of our work of identifying the priority standards. Our next steps in the coming year will be to move into the designing phase in the curriculum process, and we will begin to that vertical articulation of our priority standards. Then we're going to create a resource rubric and begin evaluating resources for our curriculum. We will also, after resources are identified, create units of instruction and pacing guidelines, develop common assessments and proficiency rubrics. And then after our core resources are identified, we will identify intervention and enrichment resources aligned with evidence-based practices. So next year, we'll move into the designing phase in the fall and winter, and then the preparing to launch phase in the spring. And we will come back to update you at that time on our resource recommendations, our units of instruction, and also our professional learning implementation plan. Can I answer any questions at this time?
Board members? At what point in the process do you review the direction you're going with our high school English teachers, get their input in terms of the curriculum and how it will prepare them for high school?
So we started that work this spring, meeting with curriculum, the TOSA for the curriculum in high school, and kind of updating her on where we are at and our direction. And we reviewed their curriculum maps that they've already created to see where the 8th grade will line up when they get to 9th grade. And also as part of our priority standards review, we looked at all standards from 5th grade to 9th grade to kind of see the progression of standards.
Okay, thank
So
you.
we'll work closely with that team this year too.
I'll start with, we did clap for the Empower teachers when they stood up, so I'm going to clap for the ELA teachers. So the process is really clear and thorough. And I know that the team of ELA teachers that we have listed here in this document are doing smart and good work. So I guess my question is that it seems like we're starting in the middle again. We kind of had that with the math, where we started in the middle, not in the high school with the end in mind, and kind of backtrack through to 6th grade and making sure there's complete, there's some alignment. While I know that the high school courses do have some, different things that they need to hit, the standards are pretty much built upon each other. So my concern, I guess, is that are we going to have a cohesive secondary ELA instruction, the practices, and even when we talk about the recommendation for the resource, are we making sure that these are things that potentially we have connection with in those high school courses, so that we have that kind of that alignment. So
I think we are learning from our previous work about coherence between the secondary 6-12. And if you'll remember, the high school ELA curriculum project is ahead of us, and they've rolled out 9th and 10th grade, and they're working on 11th grade. So we see where we're going, and that's really informing our work in middle school. So I think that is different than the work that we have done in mathematics before.
okay, so I guess I'm just making sure that I know they're ahead of you, but that it sounds like maybe you've talked a little bit, but that we really are being more cohesive in the plan. And it sounds like that's happening behind the scenes then.
It is definitely happening. And we are really working K-12. If
I
you
was
want
just
to talk
about to say
yeah.
that, yeah, we're also making, the elementary had done a CAA process for literacy probably right as we were entering the pandemic, I believe, right? The 2021 school year was when they were going to take kind of that lead, which then led us into the kind of that middle school work, but we are working kind of side by side to make sure that we continue to align. We know we need to go back and do some additional work in our K-5 literacy to do some alignment based on some of the new research and making sure we've got all those pieces in place. But we have been working very closely and making sure those things, and to the point, one of the things I said to Tina as they were getting ready to look at their resources was, I want you to prioritize resources that are K-12, K-8. Like, so that whatever we want, I'm not saying that'll be where we go, but we want to have the option to make sure that we've got some coherence in that.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. So thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So thank you very much for the presentation and for the teachers coming. We appreciate that. And we look forward to hearing more next year.
So I'd like to invite Cindy Rush up to do an update on our high school ELA. We've been working with our high school EL teachers to identify a resource to help support our instruction. So she's going to talk a little bit about that process and the resource that we're recommending.
So tonight, again, much like my colleagues, we're aligned to that same strategic commitment about innovative learning and preparing students for their post-secondary careers in higher education. In this case, we are moving to a different policy and looking at instructional materials rather than curriculum. And so we're bringing forth a resource recommendation to support the courses of ELL 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're also bringing forth a supplemental resource for consideration as well. So on the right, you can see the selection committee. It's small but mighty at the high school level. We have 2 EL teachers at East High School, and we have 1 teacher over at North High School. We also brought in the middle school coordinators. So Jacqueline Rubio is our new EL middle school coordinator to be able to have that perspective. So knowing where the middle school students were coming to, going to the high school to have that. And then we also had participation from administration from both sides of the river. And thinking about why we wanted to make this change, we were seeking a core resource to anchor the instruction. Currently, we only have supplemental resources that we're utilizing in these courses, and we were looking to have a core resource that we could use so we could have consistency. Next school year, we're expanding the opportunities for students at North High School. So we're moving from a part-time EL teacher to a full-time EL teacher and expanding course offerings. And so this seemed like a good opportunity since we were doing that to make sure that we had consistency for students at both of the high schools and being anchored in a common resource that they could collaborate with across River. And so in seeking out a resource, we had a great deal of criteria that we were looking for. And we started with WIDA Prime. So WIDA is the organization or the consortium that creates the access test, which is the test that's used to assess English proficiency for our English learners. So we looked to their organization to say, what did they say about resources? So WIDA has a process very similar to what you've seen with Ed Reports. It's called WIDA Prime. And so what they do is they have a set of criteria for evaluating resource materials, and they train educators who have a background in English language learners to review those materials and produce reports. The caveat with that is that their goal is not to say this resource is better than this resource or this one's better, but to provide information, knowing that when we think about English learners in general, it's a monolith, right? Like depending on your building, depending on what part of the country you're in, your language diversity and your cultural background of your students could look very different. Your program philosophy and the services and supports that you offer to students to develop their English proficiency could look very different. And so they basically provide information based on a set of 14 criteria and then say, you district, you know your students, you know your program philosophy, you know what's best for your students. Read this information and take what you can from it to help guide a decision. And so that's why they call it a correlation, not necessarily like a recommendation or a review. So we started there. What did WIDA Prime have to say about the various resources that were available? One of the caveats that we had also is the teachers felt it was very important for students to have both print and digital resources. They didn't want something that was solely digital or solely print. They felt it was valuable to have both. And looking at what Achieve the Core says, there's non-negotiables for looking at EL resources. They need to be designed and validated for use for ELs. I think what's very common in the market right now is there'll be a resource that they produce for monolingual, and then they do an EL version of it and say, this will work for your students. Or they'll say, this is a resource that we have that we've generated to support the general education student. And they say, this will also work for your ELs. And that's not what we were looking for. We were really looking for something that was by design from the ground up meant to support English language development for English language learners. In particular, we're also looking for something for students that were in high school. I think that that's also a rarity in the field of materials. We think the bulk of EL students are at the elementary level, and as you get higher up in the grades, there are less and less students. Therefore, there are less and less resources to choose from that are really targeted for those students. So that was the other lens that we had. So when you start to have all of those things that we're putting into place and those non-negotiables, and also being aligned very clearly to the WIDA standards, looking at the English language development standards for the state of Illinois, their priority standards, clear alignment to the levels of language proficiency and what we know is best practice instructionally for ELs was also the lens. So we're narrowing and we're narrowing. So we got down to 5 that we looked at and looked a deep dive in the WIDA Prime report and then applied all of these criteria to say which of those resources met all of those. And we got it down to 2 resources that we then decided to use in the field test, which are the 2 resources we're bringing forward to today. So Champion Ideas, we're recommending for the core resource, and then Language Tree Online ELD as a supplemental resource. So when we think about Champion of Ideas, it really does have all of those components of listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and integrated into that. There really was a strong emphasis on vocabulary development, which we know is really critical especially for developing academic language for our secondary students. They were clearly designed and targeted to proficiency levels. So there's 3 levels of the text. The red level is designed for students at level 1 and 2, the blue for level 3, and yellow for students at level 4, if you're familiar with the levels of language proficiency as determined by the access test. It's on a scale of 1 to 6, and you need a 4.8 to exit. So that's kind of where we're targeting with those levels. It had clear alignment to those WIDA standards. So we looked at it in terms of developing students academic language in the content areas as well, not just social language, not just general ELA, but there are experiences for students within the resource to develop math academic language, science academic language, social studies, and really pushing that level of rigor to emphasize critical thinking. I think so often when we look at some of the resources, the level of rigor or what's being provided to students is not going to transition them well into the mainstream classroom to be successful in a traditional English language arts classroom. And that's really the goal we had as well, is to make sure that that was in place with these resources. The language tree online is unique in terms of it's really targeting students at levels 1 and 2. One of the things in particular that we really liked about it, it had a newcomer module. And that's one of the things that we're seeing is an increase in the number of students who are newcomers, not only to our school, but recently I went to a PAC meeting with Northern Illinois University, a meeting with directors who service and support English language learners from across the area. And that is one of the areas that they report is the greatest need and change at the high school level is an increase in newcomers. And so we found that really valuable. That's a really a module to help kids just understand what high school in America is like. For some of those students, right? I have a kid that's going into 9th grade right now and just, he speaks English. He's been here his whole life and the transition to high school is not going to be easy. And so think about someone who's coming from a completely different context, speaking another language. And so one of the modules in there really just helps kids just like, what is school like here in this country? And has a series of videos and supports and vocabulary development so that they can navigate and really survive as they're developing their English language as they start high school. In terms of the professional learning, each of the resources is going to provide publisher training specific to their resource. The teachers did have some initial training prior to implementing the field test so that they could be able to instruct in the way that the resources and materials were intended to be used to make that determination that it was an appropriate fit. We're excited about the opportunities to utilize our school improvement days to be able to leverage that, and now opportunities for cross-river collaboration, especially now that we're going to have a full-time teacher on the north. That's going to be really valuable to have that person as part of the team to contribute to the conversation. At the bottom, you can see the cost. So this is the cost for both the print and digital for both of those. And then there is an ongoing cost, right? So that is a digital license. And so that will be something that we will continue to have to pay for each year per student if we continue to utilize the resource.
Any questions?
Sure, I have just a quick one. I noticed prior to you coming up that there was hardcover and there was, the digital access. Our high schoolers typically don't even use their print books. Would you like to just talk a little bit why that the team felt it was important to have print for our English language learners?
I think that the piece that they wanted was something tangible for students to be able to work and to have a text. I think that they felt like having a completely digital resource would not engage and support their learning. When I think about some of the students that are coming in, they may not have a strength in technology. So like when we think about that student population, I've got my newcomer that came in from rural Guatemala that's had limited opportunities for schooling. And I'm going to hand the child a Chromebook and say, here you go. Here's this online program. How's that going to go for you? So I think it's knowing that they know that they have a variety of student needs. And as kids are coming in from different contexts and different learning experiences, being able to have both the print and digital to kind of meet the needs of kids where they're at, gave them the greatest flexibility.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation.
So what are we using today? Maybe describe, what we have up to this point and compared to this.
Sure. So currently we have a variety of supplemental resources that they're pulling from. So some of our newcomers are getting put on Rosetta Stone. They're accessing and supporting that. They're using System 44, Read 180. They're pulling from Common Lit or Newsela. I can never say that one. And they're working to pull novels with students. They're pulling short stories. They're working with the ISCs and their colleagues who teach English courses to kind of pull from different texts to have students engage with, but they're doing a lot of work to pull things together for students. So, thank you.
So this really, it appears it's really when we're going from grade level to grade level, it's less about vertical articulation than it is about assimilating somebody coming in. They may be coming in as a freshman in high school, so we're not so much worried about that articulation from in this program. I guess the question I do have though is, do we have an increased number of kids at those older levels, the older grade levels, coming in with the EL needs? Is that a greater number than it's been in the past in the district?
Yes, so just kind of like when we think about just having to expand the opportunities for North High School, where we were several years ago, we've seen an increase of the population of students there. So we moved very much from having several refusals, they were going to access resources for EL support over at East High School, making that choice, to then having a part-time teacher at North to support students and kind of a resource capacity, to really looking at, we have enough students that we need to have a full-time person there. And will I say, yes, we've had more students coming in that are newcomers and of different language backgrounds. Most definitely at the secondary level, we've seen more newcomers from different countries than we have seen in the past. And certainly we're getting students from the Ukraine.
Yeah.
And so that's starting. And I anticipate we will see more of that to come.
That was actually part of my next question, but you just sort of answered it. So, so it's multiple languages is, I guess, really was the next question I had. So.
Right. So when we look at our district as a whole, we're at 45 or 46 different languages spoken by English learners. I don't know what that breakdown is exactly at the high school, but it is a large number of students from different language backgrounds.
Good. Thank you.
So I might need some help here. Does this need board approval since it's under 25,000? Or does
Yes.
it just go in the budget?
It actually does need board approval because we need you to approve the resource, the core resource. Any resource we use in core needs to be approved, but the amount does not impact that.
Okay. So this can go on consent then, if everyone agrees?
I just had one more clarification question, no problem. So it sounds like it was a very thorough review of the resources, so thanks for taking that on. With the annual digital ongoing cost, is that capped for a certain amount of time? Is that an agreement for 4 or 5 years? Sorry if I missed it somewhere in here.
Yes, it's an annual subscription that we would have to put in place. I think in terms of, because our numbers are shifting, we can't year to year say like, we're always going to have 30 kids that need this resource. When you think about levels 1 and 2 for the language tree online, that is really targeting your newcomer and your really beginning levels of proficiency. With the Champion of Ideas, the digital license, only the red and blue books are available in digital form. The yellow book is not.
Okay.
Kind of simulating more kind of what traditionally would be happening in an English language arts classroom. And so it's hard to predict necessarily how many licenses from year to year. And so we're annually renewing that based on the student population.
Sorry, my question wasn't very clear. I
Oh.
meant the per student cost, right? Naturally, if these populations continue to increase, it'll be a larger sum. Is the per student cost fixed?
No, not that I know of.
Thanks.
That is certainly obviously not for this particular year coming forward, but that is something we can look into moving forward in terms of, if we were to agree to a 3-year license, can we lock in our per student cost?
How many students do we have in our district now that would utilize this going into the fall? What are we, either they're established or we're projecting?
So
Do you mean at the high school or?
Yeah.
that number, based on the numbers I was provided, we would be looking at about 21 students at the red level, which is the level 1 of the Champion Ideas, about 33 at the blue level, so the level 3, and about 22 at the yellow level, the level 4. And this is preliminary,
Yeah.
and at this point.
Thank you.
just, I guess I have a quick comment. I
Oh,
appreciate,
sorry, 32 yellow. I can't add. 12 plus 20 is 32.
I appreciate that, the thought and the time and the effort was put into making sure that all of our groups of students have the comprehensive curriculum that they're working with, and they're not just pulling things, and that's a lot of extra effort on our teachers. And I want their effort and their focus to be on the students. So I do appreciate that.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you so
you.
much, and we hope that works quickly for our kids. Thanks. We're going to, yep. Our next item is the presentation on our advanced placement program.
Yes, I'd like to invite some of our high school principals, Shanna Lewis and Jim Richter, as well as Renee Reynolds, to come forward. I'm going to kind of take care of outlining the presentation, but I really wanted to make sure that we had our high school principals and assistant principals here to answer questions as they come up, as well as Audra, who is, who leads our secondary schools overall. So this evening, we're going to talk about our advanced placement program, and that really aligns across with a couple of different things, our school accountability policy, as well as our strategic commitment for innovative learning experiences, and probably the most important places in our long-term goal that ensures that every student has those college, career, and life competencies to make the choices that they would like in their secondary pathways. So this is one opportunity for us to do that for all of our students. In terms of outcomes for this evening, at the May board meeting, the board requested some additional information regarding our AP program. Specifically, some of the questions that what we wanted to explore was what's working in our AP program, where might we have opportunities for growth, has there been an impact of COVID, and how do we improve our AP program overall? So this evening, I'm going to spend some time kind of answering each of those questions for you, and then kind of outlining some next steps. Prior to kind of jumping into the data, I wanted to kind of just provide an overview of our AP program, some general information about each of those courses, so that we can help kind of guide our conversation overall. When we think about our AP program, one of the things we really think about is what is the purpose, right? In order for us to determine how well it's working, where our opportunities are, it's really about knowing and understanding our purpose. And so I started by kind of thinking through, well, what is the purpose that's been established by the College Board? Why do they say, or why do they believe that this is something that we need for our students? And so they really do talk about this idea of giving kids a head start in high school. How do we give those opportunities to students to get a taste of college, to start to think about that, to begin to develop some of those executive functioning skills, like time management that might be necessary, as well as getting their critical thinking skills up and moving, providing kids with opportunities to explore their passions as they begin to think about how might this fit into a pathway or a career that I might be interested in taking. As well as it really provides that opportunity to boost their GPA. In many cases, they're weighted classes. And so this provides students that opportunity to do that, as well as to show kind of rigor, right? When they're starting to apply to schools, when kids have taken on AP courses, it shows a commitment to engaging themselves kind of in rigor along the way. Then we kind of stepped back and really thought about, well, what is the purpose of the AP program in our district here in 203? And really kind of align that back with what is that wildly important goal that we set, which really is about building those college, career, and life skills so that kids are able to make some choices when they leave us. It's really about choice. We want to make sure students leave us with choice. And when we look at those AP classes, kind of our purpose and how that aligns to that goal, we really take a look at some of the research. And some of the research really talks about those competencies that students who earn a 3 or a better on an AP exam are more likely to graduate college in 4 years. So that really directly ties back to kind of the college competencies that they might need. Are we building those college readiness competencies? But there's also some research out there that talks about students who earn a 1 or a 2 also have better college outcomes than similar students who did not participate. So just the opportunity to engage in the rigor of the course increases their ability to stay and maintain and graduate from college. So those are things that we want to continue to think about as we lead back into that kind of wildly important goal. And then another piece that we talk about is about removing barriers for kids, making sure that all students, is there a way for us to, how do we remove some possible barriers? One thing we do know is that college is very expensive, right? I happen to have 3 children. It's costing me a fortune. And so what this really does do is it provides students with the opportunity to earn some college credit before they arrive. And so in the state of Illinois, students who earn a 3 and attend a public institution, they automatically earn they're required to provide college credit for them. However, I also want to be clear that while that is the rule and the process in the public system in Illinois, a private school or an out-of-state school has the right or the ability to set that cut score where they see fit. And so it's not uncommon to see a private school have a cut score at 4 in order to receive those college credits. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So how do we talk about getting to the point of having an AP course or an AP program kind of overall? And there's some important things I think for us to think about again as we start to think about our program. One is that all of those courses do need to be approved by the College Board. And that is done through an audit process that our teachers go through. And our schools, I should say, not our teachers. Well, I guess they do it hand in hand. But what the College Board provides to us is a course and exam description that kind of outlines the standards that students need to master in order to have said they've earned that credit over time. And all of those courses are really designed as introductory kind of college courses, right? They're the English 101, Math 102, right? So they're kind of aligned to each of those things. What's good is, or where there's some flexibility, is teachers are allowed to take kind of that information and adjust it, modify or adapt it based upon the needs of their students. So that means they could take a syllabus that's created by College Board, adopt that and submit that through the audit process. It means they could take a syllabus, create something from scratch as long as it aligns, but it still goes through the College Board process to be approved, or they can take something and modify it kind of in between. So there's a little bit of flexibility in kind of what that course looks like so that we can respond to the needs of our students. Every AP course, as you know, has an exam that students participate in, or have the ability to participate in, is probably the way I should say that. And probably the important piece here that I want us to kind of think about is that the purpose of the exam is really to measure a student's proficiency towards learning the standards that have been identified by the College Board. So the College Board has said, these are the standards kids need to have. This exam is the opportunity for students to show whether they have mastered those standards. And then based upon that score, College Board has kind of identified what each of those things mean. So if a student is offered a 3 or earns a 3 on the exam, they're saying that they've met the minimum requirements for having learned the material, and be equivalent to a B- or a C in that class. And a 4 would move up to the B+, and then a 5 would be really in that A range. But it just gives us an idea. And really the big idea behind that is that it's criterion referenced. It's about how much or how well has the student learned the standards that have been identified by the College Board. And then I think it's kind of important for us to think about what does student enrollment and what do the expectations for instructors look like as we make some comparisons to the College Board, as well as to how we run things here in District 203 or 303. I apologize. So for student enrollment, the College Board really does encourage that any student who's willing and academically prepared to participate. They also encourage us to do all that we can to eliminate barriers to courses, especially for students who may have been traditionally underrepresented in some of these courses. Our response, or how we have set up our student enrollment, really is the idea of challenge by choice, right? So we say any student has the right to enroll in any of our AP courses. And so that is kind of that open enrollment, as well as this is something that's a little bit unique to the students that we have in District 303, is that we require that if you enroll in one of our AP courses, that you are required to take the AP exam. Okay, and so that is unique. While challenge by choice is a little bit more, there are many, not many, there are some districts around us that offer kind of the same idea, but there are also many districts around us that restrict access to AP classes to students with a certain GPA, kind of along the way, maybe a teacher recommendation. So there are some school districts that restrict access, and there are some that have open enrollment, kind of as we're talking about today. And one of the things that I think, again, as we start to jump into looking at our data is to think about, we have to think about what are the rules and the parameters of the schools if we're going to make some comparison in our data. So we need to have a good understanding of, is it an open enrollment? Does every kid take the assessment? Is it restricted? What does that look like? So that when we're making some of those comparisons, we're going apple to apple versus apple to oranges. In regards to instructors, the College Board does not have any formal requirements for teachers to participate or teach those AP classes. However, they highly recommend that they participate in those subject matters. For us in District 303, we do ask that teachers participate in the Content Summer Institute, which is 4 to 5 days. And then every 5 years, we expect that they would complete some level of PD to make sure that they continue to stay on top of any new things that are happening or any new learning that is happening as it relates to AP courses. Prior to us diving into the data, I just want to take a few minutes to talk about some of the student achievement reports and some clarifications kind of in that data. And so we have a student achievement report from November of 2021 and November of 2020. So I want to first focus on that November of 2021. And one of the things that has been brought to our attention is that we were not as precise in our language as it relates to the reporting out on those AP exams. The intent of the report was really to focus in on those college and career readiness indicators that we had established kind of earlier in the school year about wanting every student to have access to early college credit, or to have earned early college credit, not access to, but to have earned that college credit. And so the statement that originally was in there just kind of said spring of 2021 and talked about the 4,273 exams that were taken and the resulting scores of 3+. That sentence really should have said the class of 2021 took 4,273 exams in their 4 years of high school that resulted in 78% of those exams earning a 3+. So we have gone and updated that report and then reposted that and made it available on our website. And then someone had brought to our attention the November of 2020 AP report. The Appendix E, there's kind of a chart that outlines all of the exams over time. And there were some mistakes when we calculated the total number of exams in the 2017, 2018, and 2019 school year. And the result of those that number happened to do with their subtest scores that come out of the Calc BC and music theory. Each of those sub-scores were mistakenly added into the total. So those sub-scores kind of were double counted, if you will. It impacted the total number of exams that were administered, but it didn't necessarily impact the percent of students who earned a 3 or higher in that information. So we have updated that as well, and we have provided that to the board for you to review as you see fit. Okay. As we begin to think about some of the data for our AP program, we're going to really kind of focus in. I'm going to kind of highlight. So you all have received a packet of the information that kind of highlights all of our courses kind of along the way for you to review. In the presentation, I'm going to kind of stay high level and talk about some of the big ideas just to help guide our conversation kind of along the way. I also want to talk through the data that we are looking at tonight is the data that is pulled directly from College Board. So we have access to, we pull that data to kind of review and look at kind of over time. So this slide kind of provides that high level kind of overview of what's really working well in our current AP classes. I'm going to give you just a kind of a minute to take a look and kind of preview that. And I will talk a little bit more about each of these areas in the slides that follow. So one of the things that we talk about as a positive for our program is really this wide variety of AP classes are offered and available to all of our students. And this chart really provides you with an overview of what that means. So you can see here all of the courses by department that we offer, and then when they're offered by grade level. So our students in grade 9 have the option for 2 different courses. And as you can see, that moves through grades 11 and 12 have the most access to those AP courses. And that's most likely due to the fact that many courses require prerequisites, right? You need to take biology before you can take AP biology, chemistry before you can take AP chemistry. This chart kind of takes a look at all of the exams that were administered and allows us to make a comparison to national scores. And we've color coded this chart in a couple of ways to kind of really make a comparison to how we've done nationally. So if you see a blue, kind of anything that's marked blue, that tells you that that score is 5% or percentage points or more above the national norm. If it's green, it's between 0 and 5%. If it's yellow, it's less than the national norm, but no more than 5 percentage points less. And if it's red, it's greater than 5 percentage points less overall. So when we're looking at this chart, what we really are focusing in on is we want 1s and 2s to be red, 3, 4s and 5s to be blue. Green is also great for 3, 4s and 5s, and yellow, also is strong in 1s and 2s. So that kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking at. When we look at this chart, what we really can see is the percentage of our students that are earning 3 or higher. Really, it runs between 75 and 77% across time from 2015 through 2019. Kind of highlighted here, the school years of 2020 and 2021. So in 2020, those were the exams that were taken at home. That was at the very beginning of the pandemic. There were lots of issues with kids taking that exam at home and administering it at home and all the things. So those scores, we need to, again, be cautious as we interpret those. And then 2021 scores would be representative of time when kids had less instructional time, right? We were working in a block schedule, alternating every other day. The students had less opportunity for instruction than they would say have had this school year. Okay. So we're kind of definitely seeing some nice scores. We're above, we're significantly above kind of the national norm. Not only we're probably 18 to 20 points above, given any point in time. So that lets us know that overall our program is strong and is very solid kind of along the way. This kind of provides us with an opportunity to take a look at how are we as a district, and then what does that look like across each of our high schools. And when we really take a look, what's really nice to see here is we see nice consistency, right? The consistency in our district data definitely represents and is seen through both high schools kind of along the way, with the 1s and 2s really coming in strongly red, 3, 4s and 5s, right? We're seeing strong 3, 4s, maybe some opportunities for growth with 5s. But overall, we can say that we're feeling pretty good about where we've been. And again, we're being very cautious with the data in 2020 and 2021 because of the way the tests were done, as well as the reduced instruction over time. This really provides us with an opportunity to look at the percent of exams resulting in a score of 3 or plus, 3 or more by grade level. And what I really want to point out here is our 9th graders or our freshmen. While they're a small portion of the number of students that we have participating in our AP programming, they are doing exceptionally well. You can see a strong number of them that are in that meeting those standards consistently. And what's important for us to know about that is College Board would kind of warns us about those grade 9 students, and to be careful that that's sometimes really hard for kids to walk into high school and take AP courses. This lets us know that our students are doing well. They're performing at high levels. The students that are choosing to do that are absolutely ready for the academic rigor that's involved in those courses. This really provides us with an opportunity to take a look at overall when we look at our student groups by race or ethnicity, how are they performing compared to all students? And what's really nice for us to take a look at this slide is to see that with across our race and ethnicity, we do not see any discrepancies in scores. And we feel that our students, if our students enroll, all students are participating at high levels or scoring at high levels over time. When we take a look at that by special student group, we do see that our students that qualify for free and reduced lunch, there is a discrepancy between those students and how well when we make a comparison to the whole group. So that's really something for us to think about kind of when we get into kind of those next steps. This slide provides just kind of an opportunity for us to take a look at a course, human geography. This starts in 9th grade. But what this really shows us is that we see exceptional, right? Our students are doing exceptionally well as a district and at each high school with high numbers of kids earning 4s and 5s. It's kind of good to see those yellows in 3. That means that more kids are in that 4 and 5 group, but we're seeing some consistency kind of across. And it just highlights that we do have courses that our students are exceeding kind of expectations across the board. So kind of taking that safe opportunity to think about opportunities for growth, right? We have lots of things and we're doing really well and we have some strong things in place, but we are always focused in on continuous improvement. What can we do next and how can we make things better for our students? And so similar to what I did with those opportunities for growth or for things that were going well, I'm going to just kind of highlight here some of the opportunities for growth. And then I'm going to follow that up with some slides that really break that down and kind of provide the data to support these general statements. Give just a minute for you guys to take a look at that. So that first one really says there's a limited number of AP courses for our students in grade 9. So we talked about and that we have 2 courses and that our students are engaged and that are doing really well. So that tells us that the students that are participating are the students that are ready for that rigor. That brings us to questions to think about and ponder is that in terms of there's many reasons that could be happening, but do we have the right number of courses in place? Should we offer more courses at this level? Or are those just the right number of courses for students? But because we have our students doing so well, it's really an opportunity us to step back and reflect. Are there others that we should be thinking about or considering kind of along the way? This really gives us an opportunity to look at enrollment in individual courses. And really what we see is that generally there's some low enrollment with many of our courses only having 1 or 2 sections overall. So when you take those numbers, you divide by 2, what we find is some of our schools are running that course at 1 or 2 sections, right? And that really raises the question, what that does is it really kind of limits a teacher's ability to collaborate with others and engage in a PLC, right? We know that what really helps move student learning forward is the opportunity to engage in professional conversation and collaboration. But if we have only 1 or 2 sections at each school, there's not an opportunity for that to occur, right? So we want to think about that. And so it really raises the question as to why are our enrollments low? Like, does it have to do with the number of AKP courses we're offering? Does it have to do with the way we've structured them overall? Does it have to do with all of our courses within that department? Again, don't have an answer, but for us to just be thinking about and process through that, those are things that we might wonder about as we think ahead. This takes a look at enrollment in our AP courses, and we do find that there are some places where our students are underrepresented based upon the overall group size at the high school level. So when we look at our race and ethnicity, we see that our Hispanic students are underrepresented in our AP courses. And when we look at our special student groups, we really see that our EL students, our students that qualify for an IEP, and our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch are also underrepresented in our AP classes. But the one that I think is most intriguing for me to think about and process through is the number of males is also underrepresented in our AP courses. So we want to dig at all of it, but that's one that we really want to dig at a little bit. Tell us a little, we need to learn more about why that is. to better understand how we can respond to that. So here, one of the things that we talked was on that slide is that we have some courses that across the district, there's opportunities for us to really dig in and learn some more. So our computer science course, as we take a look here, we can see that our scores have consistently over time been below those national norms. So this is an opportunity for us to understand what's going on, and for us to really take a deep dive into how are our students responding? Who's signing up for those courses? What skills might they need or not that they might not have in order for us to be successful? But this is across the district. So that tells us that we need to really be looking at how are we putting things in place and prioritize that. We also talked about that there are opportunities for our teachers to learn and kind of grow with each other. So that professional learning and collaboration. When we look at our calculus AB scores, we really see that in some, we have A school where students are really consistently performing well above. And while students are doing well at the other school, there's definitely room and opportunity for us to take a deeper dive and really spend some time kind of learning together. We also see that here in US history is another example where we've got an opportunity to pair teachers across river and really have them work together to improve learning for all kids. And here where we see that difference is in the difference in the 4s and 5s, right? So there's another opportunity again in that ongoing continuous improvement cycle. So what does all of that mean? And what does that mean for us, right? So we really want to think about how do we improve our AP program? And probably the first place that we start is we improve our AP program like we improve everything else that we do in our schools and in that continuous improvement framework by focusing in on our professional learning communities and making sure we have high quality instruction happening in our classrooms. So we really want to make sure that our teachers have those opportunities to engage and have those conversations about what's working, what's my impact of my instruction, and how is that working kind of overall. When we think specifically about AP, what are some things that we might want to think about putting in place? One is that we want to ensure that all of our AP teachers participate in a PLC to support their learning, to support student learning outcomes, and that we've got systems and processes in place for that. That we utilize, there's some pre-AP courses that are available or standards that we have, that we access those and we utilize them in our curriculum writing process to make sure that we are continuing to make that our classes, that our prerequisite classes are aligning and allowing kids to access and then continue to improve. The College Board, while doesn't require that we use specific resources, they do provide a significant amount of resources that are available. And so it would be a good idea for us to engage in building some common understanding around expectations related to those resources. What should we be using? Which of these which resources are we all going to use? Why are we going to use them? What does that look like? And then I think we need to really think, this is beyond AP, but to create a predictable 5-year cycle for evaluating all of the programs within the districts, whether that's AP, our EL programs, our IEP services, our academically talented, gifted programs. And that we really should be thinking about how do we develop a program evaluation cycle in partnership with the strategic plan that we're currently building and working through. As we think about kind of conducting that program evaluation for AP, based upon kind of our data, as we reviewed that data, these were some of the initial questions that we came up with that would help to start us and guide that program evaluation. I fully anticipate that these questions will be added to, adjusted, revised as we gain more knowledge, more information, to better understand how the program works over time. And then just kind of taking a big picture look here about, that was really great, Christine. You gave me a whole lot of ideas about things you're going to do, but what does that actually mean and how are we going to respond to that? So this really just kind of lays out kind of a timeline that allows us to think about what will we be doing this summer? What will we be doing in 2020 for the next school year and the summer of 23, and then again for the 23-24 school year. Probably the things that I want to make sure that we really think, or I want to be clear that we do, is that we get a committee to talk about common resource expectations, that we bring the teachers teaching those AP classes into the conversation, and that we together collaboratively build, here's what what we've decided is really important as it relates to those. So we'll probably need next school year to do that, then to give some learning and some training to really begin implementing that in the 23-24 school year. And then really that we need to do a deep dive into our program evaluation. I think that we should, my recommendation would be that we start that with this summer, with us thinking about what does that look like? What's a plan for making that happen? Really focusing on conducting it for the 22-23 school year, developing a multi-year implementation plan, and then starting with year one in 23-24. PLCs, that's something we can really take an immediate look at to say how are we currently doing that? What structures are available and how can we start to build some of those structures and put them in place? And then we can also take a look at those AP standards as well as we're building curriculum kind of moving forward. That will just become part of our new process. So it's something we did this year, even with, as we were looking at our math, algebra, geometry, and algebra 2, when we really dove into finding those priority standards, we did pull those pre-AP class standards along with our ISB standards so that we could have some solid conversation about which of these make the most sense for us kind of moving forward. So with that, I understand that I went rather quickly, but I'm happy to answer any questions. We have lots of friends here who are also happy to answer any questions you might have.
Board members, any questions? Mr. McNally?
I have just a few questions, really some basic questions on collection of data. And if you'll give me a second, I was writing them as we were going. I just need to get to the right page. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Um,
Can you tell me what page you're going to so I can?
On page 26, when we were talking about the males versus females, that was a piece of information that I'm wondering what is the percentage of males versus females in the schools overall? Because obviously that's going to have an impact.
Sure. So the number in parentheses is the number of overall, is the number in the,
Okay.
is representative of the high school population. So
All
for
right.
instance.
And I missed that. You probably said that and I missed it. So, so that would probably have some impact, I would imagine. The other.
So just for, just to provide some background information that when we ran these numbers, not me, let's be clear, when
Right.
Mr. Shazar ran these numbers, he did definitely look for statistical significance. So we made sure that it was 95% likely that this was not something that was random before we highlighted this as issues or concerns for us to think.
Yeah, I assumed. I just
Okay.
didn't know what the and I know you kind of went through it quickly on regarding the number. So the number of students, this is on page 24, the number of students taking the courses. It looks like, for example, computer science has fairly low numbers. I'm going to say is that like one section at each school?
Possibly, yes.
Okay.
Depending on how those numbers split,
Yeah.
like one school might be smaller than the other. Yep.
Which kind of leads into the other, another question I had regarding cross-river collaboration. So I'm going to jump to not a data question, but have we provided time or do we intend to provide time for that cross-river collaboration, particularly in an instance where there might not be the ability for teachers within the same building?
Yep. So yes, that's definitely in our steps. So that's one of the things we actually have started that process already to make sure that we've kind of prioritized based upon need. And then we're looking at what are those systems and structures? How do we make those systems and structures, make them available? We might have to do something virtually. We have some conversation and we're making nothing has been done. We're still in the making sure we have kind of a way to think about that. But how do we use maybe some school improvement time or institute day time, or how do each of those pieces come together?
Okay. Now, and on page 32, just as you had talked about use of the pre-AP courses, I am happy to see vertical articulation seems to have been a recurring theme for everything we've talked about tonight. And I'm pleased to see that that's something that's being addressed, that the preparation for the courses is something that I'm happy to see we're considering and thinking about how we're going to do that. And I don't want to dominate all the time here. So I wrote down page numbers, so I have to keep referring to them. The other question that kind of came up for me is the students who earn a 1 or 2 have better college outcomes, and that's of course expected that they would be taking the course. Do we have any data on students who, and obviously not at our school, but in general, does AP have data on students who took the AP courses but didn't take the test? I'm assuming that would still have probably similar outcomes to the 1s and 2s.
I believe. Yeah, I don't want to answer that question. I believe that that
didn't-
is
yeah, I
in the
didn't expect
research,
you'd necessarily know it offhand.
in the
but-
research brief I read, but how about, let me go back, check that research brief and respond to your question. So I just want to make sure I'm accurate in my response.
No, I didn't expect it to be something you'd know off the top of your head. And you were going to address at some point the private schools and the out-of-state schools that are going to require more than a 3, a 4 or better. And do we know within the state? I know this was something we had talked about a couple years ago. That we anticipated that a lot of the private schools and even some of the out-of-state schools who are trying to recruit our students would probably, try to mirror the requirements to draw them from out of state. Do we know what the numbers are of those schools that are kind of a percentage of the schools that are requiring greater than a 3 on the AP for credit? Or I know that's going to probably be by course too.
I think that's going to be dependent upon the university and the college. And like you said, let me try that again. And the course that the student has earned the grade in. However, in the end of your presentation, there's kind of the most common college institutions are listed there. So, and this is through our National Student Clearinghouse, and it really looks at data over time, but you can kind of see the top ranked schools that our students go to. I can certainly do a little bit of digging to see which of these, what the requirement is. But I think one of the things that is worth stressing, while 3 tells us that students have mastered the minimum amount in order to show competency in the course. As we think about continuous improvement, we need to be thinking about how do we get more students from a 3 to a 4 and from a 4 to a 5. And because we're doing so well, generally speaking, that's the next area for us to be thinking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the reasons that the concern, as you had mentioned, you have three children and it costs
For sure.
and I'm feeling the same pinch myself. So that the number of out-of-state schools, I have one going to an out-of-state school, and he will do fine as far as this stuff's concerned. But as we kind of look at that, I'm just interested in knowing if a lot of the private schools kind of got on board in Illinois. That's was part of my interest. It's a question we asked a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I can do a little bit of work. I can also talk a little bit as I can put my mom hat on, who has 2 students who attend, one DePaul, one Loyola. They have not gotten on the score of a 3 or better bandwagon. They are still looking at a 4.
Okay.
But I can certainly look at others.
Right,
We
and
shouldn't count on my mom experience.
I don't want to, I see a light or 2 on, so I don't want to.
Oh, sorry, I actually hit it by accident, but I do have a couple of questions. I don't know, I hit something random. I was like, oh, wait, what's happening? Are you finished, Mr. McNally? Okay, for now, okay. I didn't mean to hit it and jump in on you. With regards to Cross River PLC time, I do know from some of my friends that are teachers in other districts, and I'll get a call, oh, I met with so-and-so that taught your son in St. Charles. So I know that there are county-wide and area-wide PLC days that maybe, I don't know how those are set up, but maybe that's a possibility if there's only one section of one class at one high school. I don't know how that works, but that would be my only limited amount of
Yeah,
ability.
there's actually,
for a
that's a really
suggestion.
great suggestion, and there's a couple ways for us to do that. One would be to lean into what we have across the county, because I'm going to make an assumption they're talking about our countywide institute day when they
Right.
had some opportunities to come together.
Although it was 2 or 3, so I
Yeah.
don't really get that, but
It's across.
because I guess it would
We work with
sort of,
do
because it's
page.
do a page, but
Yeah.
do page, but yeah.
But another way for us to think about it is AP also offers some opportunities to kind of create like 4 teachers to come together and have some conversation that are teaching a similar class. So that might be another opportunity. Again, I want us to really dig at that and make sure we set up the very best things. And I don't know if anybody over here has a follow-up.
Sure. Many of our teachers rely on their professional learning networks. They call them PLNs. And oftentimes they connect through social media to exchange ideas, to exchange lessons, have some dialogue about those things. So they do utilize the resources that are available to them. And they can actually get then some perspective from those nationally or even internationally.
Great, awesome. I want to make sure that as a district, we're supporting that. No surprise that teachers are resourceful and ingenuitive and have figured out how to do it on their own. That is not a shock. I just want to make sure that we're providing support for that if we possibly can in my limited ability of suggestions. Also, so what sort of, just want to kind of think about what sort of other opportunities we might be able to give to 9th graders. There are certainly some that come in with an accelerated level of music ability. And so maybe are they able to take music theory? I do know that a small group of kids from Infinity, and that's only from my experience, it might be outside of that. If they had a math teacher or computer teacher at the middle school that thought they were able to take the AP computer class, they were able to take that as a freshman. So I know there are certain exceptions, but does that exist all across the board, like specific music theory?
So I think one of the things that we really want to focus in on is making sure that we do a deep dive into understanding what would be the best classes, how would we do that, would we offer exceptions? Let's get that written down. Let's get a system and a process in place. And if I'm over speaking here, please jump in.
I can add that for computer science, for example, we have had freshmen that have asked to take the course and we have allowed them to do so. Because it's computer science, it is learning a new language. So it's not the same as coding. So students really need to come in with a different mindset in order to do that. In terms of music theory, I can't think of a freshman that has taken it before.
It was just throwing that out there
right.
as a non-common thing. Is that a possibility?
We typically look at what College Board recommendations are in terms of grade level, and we have kind of followed that path in the past. Certainly, I think as Dr. Igo said, that's something as a district we need to look at.
Well, if there's some student that has, a concert pianist at the age of 14, I don't know if that exists, but should there be that, are there opportunities? Just trying to think out of the box a little bit. And I do know that there are exceptions for computers because rising senior did that as a freshman during lockdown. And that was a good course for him to take during lockdown because it made it, it was much easier for him to handle that. All right. To Dr. Chazara, I'm wondering if I know that data exists on what our students do and what percentages go to first year of college or completes college. I'm sure you've already looked at this and have the answer. If not, maybe this makes sense to see how that correlates with our AP enrollment, since it does seem to be a little bit lower. I don't know, just a thought. And then that ends my questions. So to Mr. McNally's point of looking at the bigger picture, how do we compare to certain schools and what kind of enrollment? Is there a correlation with how many kids take AP classes, and do those kids tend to do more completion of the 4 years of college than if they score 4 or 5? I could be just totally going down the wrong path, but maybe there is a correlation with that.
College Board already does that work.
Yeah, they do that. Look, what our school or national clearinghouse data tells us is when a student leaves us, do they enroll immediately in the first year that they graduate? Do they persevere through a second year? And essentially they're monitoring over 6 years to see, do they finish within a 6-year period of time? Our students actually do very well. I believe, and I'm pulling this out of my memory, But I believe it's like 77% of our graduates that enroll in college finish within 6 years of time, which is significantly higher than the national average.
How do they get that data?
I'm really unable to answer that question for you right
Okay.
here, but I'm happy to come back with that
Okay, yeah,
and
I
send
just,
that out. There's something that they do, but I'm not 100% sure how they do that.
yeah, I think it would be helpful to understand how this data is accumulated and how to interpret it.
No, you're absolutely right. And
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
just didn't
That's
have it
fine.
memorized.
That's fine.
Everything about vision?
Not tonight.
Next time.
Are there other questions?
Just a couple, as far as the professional development, that's every 5 years. Is that just like subject specific coursework or?
They all know this one.
I can't speak for East, but at North, we do track all of our teachers who teach AP. And we keep track of when they went through the initial APSI, AP Summer Institute. And then every 5 years or so, I reach out to those individuals and let them know it's time to go through a renewal. I can say for this summer, North has about 5 or 6 teachers who are participating in that, plus 2 initial teachers.
That's the Summer Institute you're talking about.
That is the Summer Institute, yes.
So I'm talking, the other was the expected to complete subject level PD every 5 years. Is that the Summer Institute we're talking about, or were we talking about additional?
No, that's the Summer Institute as well.
So, and does AP provide any sort of, any sort of additional training or?
There has historically been an offering that was at Oakton Community College, that many of our teachers will like to attend in addition to that 4 or 5 day APSI. Additionally, if a course does undergo a redesign, that may put a teacher back on the cycle earlier than that 5-year time period. So if I were to get trained now in AP chemistry, let's say, and it were to undergo a redesign in 2 years, I would then go to that training once again to make sure that I'm staying current with the new guidelines as established by the College Board.
Okay.
I do think that AP does offer a wide variety of ways for our teachers to engage in some professional learning. There's webinars and things like that. And I think as we think about that idea of what are some of our common expectations, might we want to think about, I think that's an area for that group of people to have a conversation about.
All right, I think I've mostly asked what I need to.
I'm interested in the evaluation process, and I totally agree that there are programs we need to evaluate. And I've been in a number of districts who talk, and maybe for 1 year it works. And I would love to see that evaluation becomes part of the CAI process, and does the deep dive so that we can make sure that it isn't just anecdotal, but that we really have done our research on it. I think it would, and I think you have this in mind. I would like to know why students choose not to take AP courses. And if there are AP courses that are not, that we don't offer, that maybe other students would take as we go into. I'm curious about competency-based and how AP fits into a student's life with that. So I'm looking forward to, and maybe when you have worked out how you want to do evaluation, sorry, you could share that with the board so we could see how that process will work and along the way. I think it will give us, I would prefer that we have the deep understanding than just the rumors or the test data. I think there's a lot to be looked at here that will cement why we want our students to take AP courses, because I think you have shown that this is something our community wants. Also, I think at some point we need to talk, and I think we have to wait till Dr. Gordon gets here, the student achievement report and how we want to provide that information and put it together. I appreciate the work you've done to get that report in line. And I think it would be good for us to all be on the same page as board members so that we can be sure that we're supporting your work as well and that we're getting the information we need. So I really thank you for doing, I know Mr. Kushner had something more to ask, but I appreciate this a great deal. The board has all the more specific data, and that's been very helpful as well. And I think we're on the right track to looking at this program. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't have much other than thanks for all the hard work that went into this. I know it wasn't easy. You know, we've discussed a couple of times kind of the philosophy of our district versus other districts. I've reviewed thousands of high school transcripts over the years, and I do see the schools that do require it or don't require it or don't allow certain students to take the examinations. And so naturally, when we're comparing ourselves against comparable schools, we're going to see a difference in that data. Although I would certainly like to see us elevated against the national average. Certainly, I think all of us would like to see that. But I do think it's important to remember that we are likely going to see an impact on the data when each of those students are required to take the examination. So I guess that's more of a philosophical discussion when Dr. Gordon and you can kind of flesh that out as to if that's the kind of the right protocol for an AP program. But I know we've received questions and concerns about that from the community. And so I just kind of wanted to address that is unique, that it is required as well as the open enrollment. So I guess it's more of a discussion of whether the experience or kind of the excellence or the outcomes of the scores are more important or equally important or a combination of that. So that's just one of the things that I noticed when I first came onto the board is that was a stark difference from some of the schools that we compare ourselves against. I have my own thoughts on that, but I will spare you all that.
Do you have an answer on why it's that way? I have my own idea, but I don't know
Why
for
we
sure.
require the exam?
Correct.
Um,
Is it rigor based?
No, that's a great question. I tried to get that. It's something that's been kind of ingrained in what we do for maybe 10 or 12 plus years, making it really difficult to get to why
It is
did that
rigor.
become?
It is. It
It's
is
about the rigor. Okay.
It's philosophically.
That's what I thought.
It adds additional rigor.
Which I think is, I definitely as a board member support that, and the public really, what I have heard is that that's something they really support. So I'm glad, but I just wasn't sure if we know that answer and it's going back
Yeah.
10, 12 years.
But I was not
Yeah.
able to get a real clear, this is what happened. This was the conversation. Yes, it was about rigor. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I would agree that it's probably about rigor. It's also about accountability, right? That is how that's how the college board manages their accountability for making sure those standards are taught, which is different than dual credit where there isn't an exam, but that's done by the early college. I have that in my head, ECC, Elgin Community College coming in and observing teachers in the classroom to make sure the standard is there. So it's about making sure that there's accountability and a standard.
Yeah, there's clearly a difference between dual credit and AP. I think something that makes it even more unique is that we have challenge by choice and a requirement to take the test. And I think that those are two things that have an impact. So I guess the two questions I would have, I know I said I didn't have any more, but the two questions I would have are moving forward philosophically, is it something we're going to do? And I think that's already been brought up. Are we going to require testing? And the other question really is there a way to accommodate both the challenge by choice, those, allowing those people to get that experience as well as the rigor, because I know those two things can be at loggerheads with one another. So, and again, not an answer that I expect at the moment. If you could give that.
Absolutely. I will happily engage with that. I will bring those questions forward. I do think that that's a conversation for Dr. Gordon and for you all to have with Dr. Gordon about what is your purpose? What do you see the purpose of that program and how do you want us to move forward?
Thank you.
Anything else?
I don't believe I said thank you for compiling all the data and putting together the report again in a new way. So I really do appreciate everyone's work. It's easier for me as a board member to see things in multiple viewpoints then I can see a bigger picture more clearly. So I really do appreciate all the effort, especially it being summer.
Thank you for sitting and helping us go through all of this. Thank you,
Yes,
Dr.
thank you.
Igo. And we will now, okay, do we have any citizens' comments? I don't, I think Mr. Baird is looking. And while we're waiting, why don't we go ahead and talk about future agenda items?
Absolutely. So for July, we have kind of our goal updates or iReady and SEL data. So we are planning to bring that forward for a conversation, as well as bring back the attendance report, kind of based upon the questions and the feedback you gave us at our last meeting. Those are the two items that are on
SEL. Are we doing an SEL update?
SEL data is in the school updates.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And we also talked about giving an overview of wellness and what work you're doing this.
Oh,
year.
absolutely. And that is correct. We'll provide you with just an overview of the work that's going on with our wellness curriculum. Because it's a little bit different because we're still waiting for ISB to, they're not going to release the standards until I believe the middle of August. So I'll let you know what we're currently doing.
Thank you for raising that. That was going to be my follow-up as well. And absolutely appreciate that the new standards won't come out until the middle of August, but given that we won't likely be expected to execute on those until at least a year later, I think it would be very helpful for the board, for the community at large to understand what the standards are for this year. If that makes
Absolutely.
sense.
So
Okay.
there will be no changes to those standards, but what the team is currently working on is developing a clear process that we'll use across all 4 schools for notifying parents of what we're covering, when they have the ability to opt out, and exactly how they go about doing that. So we'll bring that back to the board in August.
Thank you.
Mr. Baird has indicated there are no citizen
Thank you.
comments.
So I will adjourn the meeting at 7:31. Thank you all for your work and have a great rest of the day.